Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning in for today's tutorial where we'll be making either a squid all by itself, or if you'd like, a ice cream squid keychain. It doesn't have to be a keychain, I suppose. It could just be an ice cream squid. Either way, the first part of the tutorial will be just how to make this, and then the second part, if you'd like to follow along, will be how to do the ice cream, the cherry on top, and the cone underneath. So let's get some materials. Alright, so let's talk about the materials you're going to need for just the squid itself. So to make just your squid, all you'll need is a worsted weight yarn of your choice of color. I found this really cute one. It's a variegated kind. I think it's called Rainbow Sprinkle, and I really like it for my squids. So if you're wanting to make the ice cream cone squid, we're going to need a few other colors as well. So in addition to your main body color, you'll want a frosting color. I'm using pink for sort of a strawberry flavored frosting, and then a cone color. I'm using this buttercream yellow as my cone. And you'll also need just a very small length of red yarn too to make the stem to our cherry. So the regular squid is also going to need some 8mm safety eyes. I'm using a particular brand that I think is really cute. It's got these painted eye shines. And if you'd like to use the same brand, I'll go ahead and in the description add a link to where I get my eyes. You can use whatever safety eyes you'd like though. If you're making the ice cream cone squid, you'll also want one red pom-pom, which we'll use to make the cherry on the top of the frosting. And of course, if you'd like to make yours a keychain, you will need a keychain attachment. I can also put a link in my description on where I get my keychain attachments if you'd like. Alright, so that covers all of the basic materials that we're going to need. But we'll also need just your standard amigurumi things like a little bit of fluff stuffing that we can put inside. We'll need a pair of scissors to cut all of our ends and bits, a 4mm crochet hook to, of course, crochet with, and then a stitch marker, sewing needles, all of the normal things that we would use with an amigurumi pattern. Alright, so let's get started with that basic squid body. Alright, so with your crochet hook, whatever size you end up grabbing and using, we're gonna make a magic loop with our main yarn color. So I like to make my magic loops using this wrap method. So around my index finger and my middle finger, I'll pinch the yarn, wrap it around the back of the two fingers I've got here, and then cross it in front of what I have pinched, and then I'll flip my hand over and then pinch that tail with my thumb as well. And then with my crochet hook, I'll go under this loop closest to my fingertips and then pull this second loop underneath, and then I'll flip my hand over and very carefully with my right hand pinch all of this to hold it in place while I slip my fingers out. Then I'm going to grab my working yarn and then pinch where that yarn is wrapped together and pull up a loop to start my magic loop. I'll have to do a little untangling, so this small tail here needs to get pulled out of the loop. And then I like to give it a tug both on this tail and on this side of the loop to kind of snug everything down. Then once I've done that, I'm ready to go ahead and get started by adding 6 single crochet stitches to this magic loop that I've just made. Once I've got all 6, I'm going to grab that tail and see it's underneath. I'm going to pull it back up so that it's on top of the loop here. And I'm going to give it a tug to close that magic loop. And I'm ready to start my next round. Okay, so for round 2, we're going to go ahead and place 2 single crochet in each stitch all the way around. And this is a good time to start using a stitch marker too. I like to use a bobby pin because it slips in and out really easy. So I'm going to mark that first single crochet stitch that I've made, add a second to that first stitch, and then continue putting 2 single crochet stitches in each of the stitches of this round. Alright, that's round 2 done. For our next round, we're going to put 1 single crochet in the first stitch of the round. Go ahead and remark that stitch. And then we're going to put 2 single crochet stitches in the next stitch of this round. Then we're going to repeat that pattern of 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch, 2 single crochet stitches in the stitch after, all the way around until we reach our stitch marker. Alright, so our next round we're going to continue that increasing pattern that we just started by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch and in the second stitch. So 1 single crochet stitch, another single crochet stitch, and then an increase, so 2 single crochet stitches in the next stitch after. So that same pattern of 1 single crochet, another single crochet, and then an increase, we'll repeat that all the way around until we get to the end of our row. So next up, we need to actually do a few rounds of only single crochet to build the height of our squid's body. So we're going to go around and around, 5 rounds total, simply placing 1 single crochet stitch and putting our marker back in, of course, in each stitch all the way around. So I will see you after I finish all 5 rounds of single crochet. So catch you in a bit. Alright, so I'm wrapping up my 5th round here, and I'm ready to start decreasing. So to start that, sort of like the inverse of how we increased. So we'll begin by placing 1 single crochet in the first 2 stitches of our round. So here's the first single crochet stitch and the second, and then we're going to decrease, and I like to single crochet 2 together whenever I decrease. So we're going to go through the first stitch that we've got up next and draw up a loop, and then in that next stitch go through, draw up a second loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook to decrease. And then just like before, we're going to repeat that same pattern of 2 single crochet, so 1 in the first stitch, 1 in the second stitch, and then decreasing all the way around until we get to the end of the round. Alright, so I've just finished those decreases for that first round of decreasing. And now we're going to continue decreasing, but we also are going to add the tentacles for our squid, because I don't like going back and sewing them on any more than you do, so I like to add them to this next round. So to do that, go ahead and take our stitch marker out. In our first stitch, we're going to place 1 single crochet, mark that stitch just like you have been this entire time. Then we're going to chain 6 stitches. 5 to make the length, 1 to turn our work. So we're going to single crochet back down this chain that we've just made by going through the second loop from our hook. So not here, but in here, placing a single crochet. So there's our first. Continuing down that chain, here's my second single crochet, third, fourth, and the fifth one can sometimes be a little hard to find. That's right at the top of where that single crochet is at the very beginning that we made. So kind of dig your hook in and find that last chain. And then we're going to decrease because we want to do one single crochet and then decrease for this round. But we're going to actually single crochet 3 stitches together. I find if I skip this stitch, there's a really large gap in my squid's body, which is not great if we're stuffing it. So in that same stitch that we put that first single crochet in, we're going to insert our hook and drop a loop. And then in the next stitch, insert our hook, drop a loop. And in this decrease from the round before, insert our hook, drop a loop, and then single crochet all 3 of those stitches together. And that's our first tentacle formed. To repeat that pattern, we're going to single crochet in the next stitch, chain 6 stitches, just like we did with the first tentacle, turn and work in the second loop from our hook, a single crochet stitch, continuing single crocheting down our chain, and then single crocheting 3 stitches together, the stitch that our single crochet comes out of, and then the 2 stitches behind it, the last one being that decrease. All right, so I count 2 tentacles. We've got 4 more to go. We're going to repeat that same pattern until we get to our stitch marker. So I will see you whenever I reach that point on my squid. All right, so I'm about to do my last decrease here. There it is. And then before we finish off the squid, I'm going to pull the last loop up because I need to add the safety eyes. So I like to flip my squid over so the working yarn is in the back because I find it's hard to line the eyes up over that seam where the spiral starts to shift down. So with that in the back, we're gonna go ahead and take our safety eyes, and then where you place them is sort of up to you. I like mine to be a little lower on his body. I think it looks really cute. So if I were to count, here's round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So between rounds 8 and 9, with 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches between. So let me copy that over on this squid. Rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. I'll place my first eye in between these 2 tentacles. I like it with the shines up. That's just me. And then 4 stitches in between. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And in that 5th space, our second eye. Once you've got those in the spot you'd like them, grab the backs, snap them on, and then we'll finish off our last decrease on our squid's body. All right, so we're ready to finish our last decrease on our squid here. So go ahead, flip your work back over, insert your crochet hook, tighten down that loop, and now we're ready to decrease all of the way. So to work this round, we're going to be decreasing underneath the tentacles. So in our first stitch, we're going to, which is right here, we're going to insert our hook and drop a loop, and then pushing that tentacle up and out of the way, we're going to grab the stitch immediately to the left of that tentacle. So let me do that again really slow. Sometimes it's hard to see. So flipping that tentacle up, we're gonna grab this one right here, which is leading into this decrease from the last round, which is what we want. So going through that, pulling up a loop, and then drawing through all of those loops to form our first decrease. I'm also going to mark this because it's the first stitch of my round. So let's do that again, grabbing this stitch here to the right of our next tentacle, pulling up a loop, folding that tentacle up and out of our way so we can grab the next stitch to the left, which is the one that's inside of that decrease here. So going through, drawing up a loop, and then pulling through all the loops on our hook. So we're going to do that for each tentacle all the way around until we get to our stitch marker. All right, here's my last one. So I can take my stitch marker out, and then I'm going to slip stitch to the first decrease I made in this round to fasten off. If you're making just the regular squid, cut yourself, maybe a 8-inch tail. If you're making the ice cream squid, you don't even really need to fasten on. We can just cut a little bit of a tail to tuck in. So I'm gonna cut an 8-inch tail and then pull my loop through. And then we need to stuff our squid. So through this opening left in the bottom of his body, take a little fluff. Giving a stuff. I don't like to stuff mine too firmly. I like them to be kind of squishy still. And if you are making just the squid, we need to sew through all of the remaining stitches left. So with that 8-inch tail that we cut, grab your tapestry needle, thread it through, and then we're going to sew through the front loop of each of these single crochet stitches that are left in our last round. It's really easy to catch the tentacles underneath this working yarn, so I find if I sort of lay it in between them in that space, so I don't wrap around one, that's been helpful for me. Once I've got all of those sewn through, I'll pull tight to close up the bottom of my squid, and then I'm gonna loop this onto the surface of my squid, and then sewing down and then up through that loop that I've made, we'll tie what I like to call a surface knot, which will secure that opening that we've just sewn closed. And then I'm going to weave this tail end in through his body and then just up through a random spot and snip to finish off. So if you're making just your squid, congratulations, he is done. However, if you would like to make him into a sundae or ice cream cone squid, follow along from this point. So for our ice cream squid, we don't need to weave this in because our cone is gonna just stick straight onto the body. So you can cut a shorter tail, maybe 4 inches, and I like to just kind of stuff the tail inside of the body to keep it out of my way. So our squid's done, so now it's time to add the frosting, the cherry, and the cone at the bottom. So for whatever color you're using for your frosting, we're going to start off with another magic loop. And we're going to place 6 single crochet stitches inside of the magic loop to start. pull that tail to close our magic loop. And then for our next round, we're going to place 2 single crochet stitches in each stitch of the magic loop that we just made. Don't forget to mark the first stitch of your round to help you keep track of where the beginning of the round is. Alright, so for our next and final round of our frosting, we're going to place 1 single crochet and mark that. And then in that same space we just placed that single crochet, we're going to place a half double crochet. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over and draw through a loop, then yarn over and draw through all 3. In the next stitch we're going to double crochet. So in case you're not sure how to do that, that's a yarn over, then an insert through, yarn over, draw through 1, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2, and then another half double crochet in that same space. Then we will slip stitch to the next stitch, and then we're going to repeat that same pattern of single crochet and half double crochet, then double crochet, half double crochet, then slip stitch all the way around our frosting. So here I am on my last 2 stitches. So I'm going to single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, half double crochet. And you might be thinking, oh, well, we don't have that extra stitch to put the single crochet or the slip stitch in. We're actually going to fasten off and slip stitch at the same time to end our frosting. So in the first stitch, we'll place a slip stitch, and that will wrap up the frosting for the top. So we're going to cut ourselves a medium length tail, maybe 6 inches, and then fasten off just as we would normally by pulling through. Alright, so now that we've fastened off on our frosting, let's take care of a little bit of paperwork before we get started with the cherry. So I like to cut the magic loop tail, and since this is going to be on the surface, like face down this way, you don't have to cut it really short. You can leave maybe a couple centimeters hanging off the end here. And then we're going to attach the cherry directly to this frosting and make the stem all in one fell swoop. How's that for innovation? So we'll take that red yarn that we've already cut. You only need a little, maybe, oh, this looks about 10 inches or so. We're going to thread our tapestry needle with that. And then we need to tie a knot at the end here. And the way I like to do that is holding my tapestry needle in my right hand and my yarn in my left. I like to cross the needle over the top and then pinch the tail and then wrap. I guess I'm going counterclockwise around the needle just like so. And then I'm going to slip all of these wraps down the bottom of the needle and pull the needle through to tie a knot. Then we're going to give the tail end of that knot a snip. And then in the center of our frosting, we'll go up straight through, just like so. Alright, so now that we've got the red going through our frosting, we're ready to attach our cherry. So for my squid, I'm using a smaller puffball. I'm using a approximately, let's look and see, 1 centimeter sized puffball. Now if you're making a larger squid, you might need a larger sized puffball or pom-pom, whatever you want to use. But then with that red that we've threaded through, we're going to go straight through the center of our pom-pom. And then send that pom-pom all the way down the top of our frosting. And then we can cut the stem of our cherry by leaving a little extra of our red hanging out of the pom-pom. So that secures the pom-pom to the top of our frosting, and it makes it so it looks like it's got its little stem. If you are maybe making this for a smaller child, or you're worried about someone grabbing this pom-pom just pulling, you can also add some hot glue. Simply lift the pom-pom up a little bit, put a couple of dabs of hot glue all around, and then just shim it back down on top of the hot glue. I, however, am making this for myself, and I'm not liable to pull the cherry off and try to eat it, so I'm gonna leave it just how it is. Alright, so let's get it attached to the squid's head. Alright, so we're ready to attach the frosting and cherry to the top of our squid. So with that tail left over from our frosting, go ahead and thread that through your tapestry needle. And then here's where some creativity kind of comes into play. So for mine, I centered mine on the top of my squid's head, which I think looks cute, but kind of playing around with it, you can offset the frosting. Maybe you want it to kind of like be sort of jauntily placed on his head on the side, further down to the front, maybe over here on the left, closer to the eye. It's really up to you where you want to place it. I'm going to try something a little different, and I'm going to put mine a little closer to the right side and not quite centered on his head either. So to tack it down, once you've got it, once you've figured out where you'd like to place it, we're going to sew this pink yarn that we worked with down into the squid's body and then up through the frosting. And be careful, his little legs like to get caught in that. And then we're going to continue sewing stitches down and through the frosting and then back up through the body and underneath the frosting until we've secured it to the top of his head. I usually add a few stitches. I don't go through every single one. I kind of skip a few as I go. And then I try to send my yarn as close to where the frosting is to help hide it. I find whip stitching sometimes you see the whip stitches, and I don't like that on my amigurumi as much. So you can see I'm sending it down through the frosting and then up sort of underneath where my next stitch is going to go. And then I'll go up through the frosting here. All right, I think I've got maybe one more stitch left to go. Yep. And then I'm ready to fasten off, or to tie a knot. So to do that, I'm gonna go back up through the squid's body and into the frosting. And then just like we did when we closed the squid up, and like what I like to do whenever I finish things off, I'm going to tie a surface knot by looping the yarn I'm working with over the body, sewing down into the fabric and up through that loop that I just made, and then holding it close to the work, tightening that loop until it ties a knot. Then we can weave this tail end in, just go through the frosting and out through the body, some random spot, doesn't really matter where, and give that a snip. And there is the frosting and the cherry attached. So let's finish it up with the ice cream cone. All right, so for the cone, I'm using a buttery yellow color. You can use whatever color you'd like. We're gonna start off once again with another magic loop. And then we're gonna put 3 single crochet stitches inside of the magic loop. Working with 3 in the magic loop makes the tip of the cone really pointy, but you have to be sort of careful with the next stitch that you place. So let me walk you through how to make a nice pointy cone without it getting kind of loose in the stitches. So our first stitch is right here, and we're going to place 2 single crochet in each of the 3 to make the first row of our cone. So you have to kind of, holding the tension, you have to sort of tightly make that first stitch, because if you make it too loose, there's a hole, there's a gap between where your first stitch is and where the last is, which we don't want. So there's my first done. Here's my second. Then I'll increase in the next stitch as well. And then my last, I'll put 2 more stitches. Which gives me a really pointy ice cream cone, which I want. All right, so we're ready to continue working around. And I'm gonna start marking my rows at this point. So in our next stitch, we're gonna place 1 single crochet. Go ahead and mark that stitch as well. And then we'll increase in our second stitch. So put 2 single crochet stitches. And then we're going to repeat that, 1 single crochet, increase, and 1 more single crochet, and then 1 more increase. At this point, I also like to take my magic loop tail and stuff it inside of the cone, pushing it down towards the tip. All right, and I'm ready for my next round. So for this round, I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch, another single crochet in the second stitch, and then I'm going to increase in the third stitch. And repeat that same pattern, 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, increase, 1 more repetition of that to the end of the round, 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, increase, oops, and then I'm going to finish the cone off with 1 row of just single crochet. So that's just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. All right, so that's the cone wrapped up. So we can go ahead and cut ourselves a 8-inch tail or so, because we're going to use that to attach the cone to the squid. Take that stitch marker out. We'll fasten off by slip stitching to that first stitch and pulling through. And then we're ready to get this attached to our ice cream squid. All right, so first, before we attach, we need to get a little stuffing into the bottom of the cone. The magic loop tail did a little, but the top part of the cone is deflated a bit. So just a pinch of fluff in your cone. Then we'll go ahead and thread our tapestry needle with that tail that we cut when we fastened off. And we're ready to sew the cone onto the squid. So it sits right at the bottom of his body, sort of wedged inside of all of his tentacles. If you find you have to kind of pull the tentacles out a little bit to help the cone sit, that's fine. I have to do the same thing too. But once it's ready and it's sat in its spot, all we need to do is carefully whip stitch the cone on, being mindful to not accidentally tack our tentacles down too. I feel kind of bad for the poor little dude. I sort of smush his head against my desk as I work my way around. No hard feelings, little guy. But we'll whip stitch through each of the stitches, pulling tight to keep the cone in place. last stitch for me right here. Oop, it caught his tentacle. There we go. All right, so to finish off attaching the cone, I need to tie another surface knot. So to do that, again, loop the yarn over the surface of your work. So down and then up through that loop we just made. Pull tight. And then send any additional remaining tail into your squid's body. And cut. And that wraps up the crochet portion of this ice cream cone squid. So if you'd like to make it a keychain, stick around for the next step. So like I mentioned at the intro, I was going to include a link for where I get all of my parts to make keychains. So if you'd like to make a keychain and you've got the keychain attachments, we'll take the squid that we just made and grabbing one of our jump rings, or a giant cluster as I just did, with our needle nose pliers. We'll thread our needle nose pliers with the jump ring through the squid's body. And whenever I make keychains, I like to make sure the jump ring, the O of it, is this direction and not this way, because it helps the keychain hold this face towards us. If you put it in sideways, it makes it so that your squid will kind of turn one way or the other. I want to see his face, he's really cute. So I've got my jump ring in, then I'm going to take my keychain attachment, thread it through one of the sides of the jump ring. There we go. And then with my needle nose pliers, I will give the jump ring a pinch to close the loop. There it goes. And then I like to spin my jump ring so that that is on the inside. And that wraps up my squid keychain. All right, so that wraps up this squid or ice cream cone squid tutorial. Thanks for watching and sticking around, and I hope you really enjoyed making this cute little guy with me.
Like always, thank you so much for watching this video tutorial. I'd love it if you'd maybe give my channel a follow. I've got lots of things that I'd like to share. Thanks!